of the most popular events for especially new speech and debate students is the event called Impromptu. Now, a lot of times it's popular because people think it's easy or because they think that they don't have to do any preparation for it, but that is hardly the truth, as we'll talk about in this quick overview video today. So what exactly is impromptu speaking? Impromptu speaking works like this, and this is the spiel I give every single competitor when they come into my room when I'm judging an impromptu round. Now, one quick caveat. A lot of people don't understand how impromptu works, and especially when there's beginning judges that get thrown into impromptu, they do things a little differently. So every single round might work a little bit different. It's going to be a variation of the same kind of idea. But this is how it's supposed to work anyway. You come into a room. It's only you and a judge. There's not a bunch of other audience members in the room. Just one-on-one, you and the judge. The judge is going to hand you this slip of paper. It's got 3 different things on it. It typically has a quote, which is a nice full long sentence. It has a phrase, or it has a single word. Now, as soon as you take this piece of paper and you start reading these topics, the clock starts. You have 30 seconds to pick one of these and to mentally write the speech you're about to present in your head. 30 seconds to prepare for a 5-minute speech. At the end of that 30 seconds, the judge is going to say time, and that's when you're going to start speaking. So you've got a lot to do mentally in that 30 seconds to be ready to speak nicely about these 3 things. So what's going to happen is your brain is going to process this. And one of the things that we need to work on is what to do during that time so you're processing things correctly. So let's go through this as a sample. You're speaker number 5 in the round. You go in, judge hands you this, and you read the 3 topics. You read Be a Rainbow in Someone Else's Cloud by Maya Angelou. That's one you could potentially pick. Sunglasses. There's our individual word. You could pick that. And number 3, gun control. So you can see you have a wide variety of things you can talk about within this round. You don't have to talk about all 3. You need to pick one, and that's what you're going to talk about. So for instance, in this case, you don't have to mark it, but I'm just for visual reference, I'm going to say sunglasses. Okay. One of the first things you need to realize when you're doing impromptu is that just because the word says sunglasses does not mean you need to spend the next 5 minutes talking about actual physical sunglasses, okay? That's going to get a little bit weird. We're going to talk about the fashion of sunglasses. We're going to talk about the different lenses. I mean, you could do that. There's no rules against that. But don't feel like you have to talk about things as they physically are. So let's think a little more subjectively about sunglasses and what we could be talking about there. So for instance, what do sunglasses do? Well, they block the light. They help diminish the light. So what kinds of things in our own life can we see that diminish the light? That could be an interesting thing all about sunglasses. Okay, so what I need to do in my brain in, again, 30 seconds, I need to read each of these. I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to go with sunglasses. And then I need to come up with the things we talk about in the How to Write a Speech video that you might have seen on the website. You've got to come up with your introduction, thesis statement. What is it that I'm trying to say in this speech? Your roadmap, which we'll talk about in a second. Point 1, point 2, point 3. Conclusion is easy because it just ties back to your introduction. So, again, sunglasses. Introduction. When I think of sunglasses, the first thing that's going to come to mind for me personally is the old 80s song, I Wear My Sunglasses at Night. All right, so I've got that. And you're not writing anything down. This is all what's happening in your head. Sunglasses at night. Because that's a fun 80s song, and I can do something fun with that. My thesis statement. What's the point that I want to make with this? Okay, sunglasses. Sunglasses are a good metaphor for things that block our vision in life. Okay, sure, why not? Now, mentally, we're going to skip the roadmap for just a second. We're going to come back to that. What is my first point? What's something that that blocks our view? Okay, our own limitations. Okay, own being the key word. Something else that may be able to block our view, like sunglasses would. The limitations we think others have on us. Limitations of others. And again, I'm just trying to think of this off the top of my head. And finally, I'm going to talk about why this matters. Why is always a good third topic. Okay, so now that I've got my 3 main points, I can put my roadmap together. Again, this is all happening in 30 seconds in my head. So as I put this together, I can now say, today I'm going to talk about things that hinder us, similar to how sunglasses would. And I'm going to do that by talking about 3 different things. First of all, I'm going to talk about our own limitations that really block our view. Second, I'm going to talk about the limitations that others put on us and how those can block our view. And finally, I'm going to talk about why this all matters. Okay, see that right there is the roadmap. It's just a quick statement of my 3 points. But in order to have the roadmap, I have to have my 3 points. Conclusion is going to tie back to my introduction. A few tips now for actually pulling this off. Tip number 1, remember your 3 points. I've seen so many people when they get into impromptu and they have a great thesis and they have a great roadmap, but by the time they get to point 3, they cannot remember what point 3 is. And so they have to go a completely different direction because their brain's like, that was 4 minutes ago. I don't remember what I said. So try to think of things that you know you'll be able to remember so that way you can stay consistent throughout your speech. Another tip that I would highly recommend is find something that you can talk about for a minute apiece. So for instance, it's a 5-minute speech. So let's break this down. If point 1, I'd talk about that for 60 seconds. Point 2, something I can talk about for 60 seconds. Point 3 is something I can talk about for only 60 seconds. That's 3 minutes right there. If I spend a minute on my introduction, thesis, and roadmap, that's 4 minutes. Conclusion is 30 seconds. I'm getting pretty dang close to time. So really just find something you can talk about for only 60 seconds as your points. Now, if you want a really good way of doing points, especially if you're new to this, think back to what you learned probably in middle school. And when you're talking about journalism or you're talking about English, and there's all those questions that the W questions. Who, what, when, where, why, how, that kind of stuff. Those can make great, easy points. So for instance, point 1, a great thing to do for point 1 is always going to be what. So let's define what this is. What is it that we're talking about? What exactly is happening here? Point 2 could be how. How does this work? And point 3 could be why. This works for almost any topic. So for instance, let's say you decided to go with the other topic here, gun control. What do I do with that? All right, what are my points? I'm going to think back to this structure. What is it that gun control is? Second, how does gun control work? And 3, why is it important? Boom, there you go. You got your speech right there just with those 3 words. So it's an easy way to come up with structure when your brain is like, I can't think of anything, just default back to that. Now, your thesis statement, and that all depends on your personal point of view and the direction you want to go with your speech. They don't tell you which direction you need to advocate for gun control. You could say gun control is important, and here's what that is, here's how it works, and here's why. Or you could say gun control is overrated. We don't really need gun control because here's what that means, here's how it works, and here's why. Let your own direction be what you choose to do as far as where you take these topics, but it's not as hard as people think to come up with the structure, especially in that 30-second time period. Again, just remember your structure. This is vital throughout all of impromptu. Introduction, thesis, roadmap, point 1, 2, point 3, conclusion. Tie that conclusion back to your introduction and just practice away. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, one of the things that people constantly think is that impromptu is an easy event because it doesn't require any work. I think that is completely false. And here's why. One of the things that I would do as an impromptu person, as I used to do it back in college, is I would constantly be looking for examples that I can put, file away in my brain for things to use for that intro. Clever stories, funny observations, even things that happened a few hours ago could be turned into something interesting. My favorite introduction I used throughout competitive speaking in college in impromptu was that of, it came from Star Wars, from Empire Strikes Back, when Yoda lifts Luke's X-Wing out of the swamp. It's all covered in mud and guck. Luke comes up and he said, I just don't believe it. And Yoda looks at him and says, that is why you fail. You can take that one story and apply it and twist it to almost any situation in impromptu. So find things like that and constantly be practicing. Second, always be practicing really fast what you can do with speech structure in 30 seconds. That might sound like a weird game, but it actually works. We would do this to kill time in line at Disneyland. My son would look at me and be like, Dad, gun control, go. And I'd be like, all right, here's my introduction, here's my thesis, here's my point 1, 2, 3, and my conclusion. Boom. I would just do it right then and there. And then I'd go back to him. Here's your topic, go. And he would have to mentally list it out. It's a good way to keep you mentally sharp as far as prepping for impromptu, and it's a good way to just practice. Impromptu, just like every other event, takes practice. If you go into the event thinking, haha, I don't have to do anything, I don't have to prepare because it's impromptu, you're not going to do well. Impromptu also, just like all the other events, takes practice. It's a lot of fun being able to speak off the cuff, but you've got to be able to do it correctly, because otherwise you're just rambling on for 5 minutes about something with no structure, with no sense of where you're going, with no interesting statements, and that is really not fun to listen to as a judge. Speaking is an art. Public speaking impromptu style can be really cool, but you've got to use this in everything you do with the event. So that